So, if one has regard again to what is stated in the last part of paragraph 1 to your statement, it is recorded there that the subcommittee of Cabinet played a role in giving effect to the decisions of Cabinet regarding the strategic defense procurement packages. What would you, in brief, describe these decisions of Cabinet be with regard to the procurement of these packages, among others?
Well, Commissioners, the first decision, of course, would have been that we must take the necessary steps to make sure that this equipment is acquired. And therefore, various structures would have been established to process this matter. I'm talking about structures below the Ministerial Committee, who would then look at the matter and then recommend to the Ministerial Committee. So one of the decisions would be that. There would have been other decisions like, for instance, a decision that says, let us look at affordability. Once you'd said this is what we're going to get, which is a matter which the Treasury, Minister of Finance and Treasury would have dealt with, but they would have reported to the Ministerial Committee in the first instance. So Ministerial Committee would have to look at that to see whether what has come out of that is a matter that can properly be reported to Cabinet, would process it to that extent. I'm sure that that would have happened also with regard to the first reports of the negotiating team, which then had to negotiate final contracts with the preferred bidders, that Cabinet would have said, set up this thing and let it do whatever. And then the Ministerial Committee would have had oversight of the work of that negotiating team, so that by the time the report comes to Cabinet, it would have been processed by the Ministerial Committee. Thanks.
Now, we have already touched on your role as the chairperson of this interministerial committee, and you have testified that the various ministers who formed part of this committee were responsible for the functions in their respective divisions. For instance, the late Minister Joe Modise, as Minister of Defense at the time, would have been responsible for defense matters. Former Minister Manuel would be responsible for financial and treasury matters. Former Minister Erwin would have been responsible for issues relating to the national trade and industry, also regarding the industrial policy that had been developed by Cabinet at the time. Now, while these individual and respective ministers were responsible individually for their departments, is it so that as members of the IMC, they would discuss the matters relating to their respective departments jointly as members of the IMC and perhaps seek to reach consensus at that point?
Yeah. I should say, Commissioners, there was another member of the member of the IMC, that's the Minister of Public Enterprises, that we haven't mentioned. That's important because it relates to, for instance, your DIPs, because we are dealing with state corporations in the military defense sector. So I'm saying that we didn't mention the Commissioner, Commissioners, the fact that we also had the Minister of Public Enterprises as member of the Ministerial Committee. Now, indeed, the particular matter of processing matters relevant to each ministry, of course, would first of all be done by the minister concerned, which report in the end would come as all other reports from the lower structures would then ultimately come to the ministerial committee as recommendations. So that's what would happen. And sure, as a ministerial committee, I'm quite sure that in instances where this might have been necessary, we would have had a look at ensuring that there is coherence. There is coherence in terms of the decisions that are being taken, affecting different departments and ministries.
And this, to an extent, is what the Constitution in Section 85 refers to as coordinating functions of Cabinet. You find that the late Minister Stella Sigcawu, as Minister of Public Enterprise at the time, would be looking at the impact that the procurement would have with regard to the defense industry. Minister Erwin would also have regard, together with his department, on the impact that would be achieved with the leveraging of industrial participation from the various bidders and so forth. Is that how this was intended to function?
Yes, certainly I would imagine that, yes, that's how the matter would have proceeded.